What up, everybody? You guys getting pretty good with this chat thing here, I see. Gosh, who's all in the house tonight? We got Amy, Candy, hi, Gene and Daryl. Matt Clements, how is everyone doing? That's a good question. Teresa, hey, Daryl, appreciate you being here. Hi, Eric and Laura. Teresa Bitters. Another great movie is Risen, the movie. Yes, that I have seen that one. That is a pretty good movie. Quinn, Luke in the house. Let's see here. Parker, what's up? Angie Myers. Hey, Angie, I got your email. I will respond when I'm done here tonight. Dave and Amy, how you doing? Mike and Miriam. Sue, how you doing? Margie and Doug are here. Hi, guys. Matt Clements, are the public pools opening up this summer? I would not hold your breath for that one, my friend. Let's see here. We got Val Cisco is here with us tonight. I've been working a lot. I'm sure you have, Val. Hey, Joyce. Audra, good evening. Paul Yale. Hey, Nicole, how you doing? Nikki, is today Pizza Monday? I'm wondering about that. So, all right, we're going to give everybody a chance to get logged in here tonight. Maybe if my tablet here will do what it's supposed to do. So what everybody do today? Anybody do anything good? Pizza Tuesday, Nikki. I like it. Hi, Linda. Anybody do anything exciting today? I need to know. Did somebody in the house tonight do something exciting? Most exciting thing you did today? All right, Amy worked today. I guess you define that as exciting. Joe cleaned his closet. Had a water gun fight with the boys. Teresa, that could be exciting if you won. So let us know on that. Let's see. Gene Smith took a walk, gave blood. Join the club there, Gene. I gave blood too. Worked on a puzzle. Good. Matt worked. Mike and Mary went for a walk. Nicole says hi, Teresa. So make sure you say hi back. And Audra Sutton made a pie and homemade noodles. What time supper there, Audra? Just checking, for a friend. Tim, do you like Boca Burgers? Oh, hold on here. The chat's rolling a little bit. Tim, do you like Boca Burgers? Tried to give blood, but no appointment. I know today they were swamped. My appointment today was for 2:30, and I didn't get in the chair until almost 4 o'clock. So it was busy here today, which is good. They need blood, but they were down help today. So Boca Burgers are okay. You got to be real careful because you cook them a little too long, and they're like trying to eat cardboard, Cool Hand Luke. But they're okay. Not my favorite. Nicole, she worked today. That does not sound exciting. Eric, he worked today. Cooked out and took a walk. That sounds exciting. Janine, nice walk after a stressful day. Recruited to make masks for my pharmacy. Yes, I also got a request in from I forgot his name. The chaplain down at the hospital, Bob. I can't remember his name. He has requested masks. So any of you who have the opportunity to make masks, the hospital is asking for them. So if you can do that, the request came across my desk a couple of hours ago. So Paula worked at home, able to sync 4 devices successfully. All right, Paula. Slow clap for Paula, everybody. Syncing devices sometimes can make you question your faith. So good job for you, Paula. Hey, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. I assume it was nice out. It wasn't so nice this morning, Cheryl, but it definitely got better this afternoon. Teresa did not win the water gun fight. Congratulations to the grandsons on that one. Matt Clements sat on the porch. Buddy, I could go for that. Joe Sutton got none of that pie. Joe, if you need a good divorce attorney, I can recommend one. Linda Burkholder was gardening. Today, a good day for that. They didn't take any walk-ins at the Bloodmobile. I'm sure they didn't because they were swamped. Michelle Curie and decorated Beth Harness Figures Drive. She turned 50 today. I bet she really appreciated that. Michelle, did Beth's foot ever heal? Remember when I left Forest Park, she was in some kind of futuristic contraption where she could put weight on it. Is she able to walk better yet? All right, so we got Teresa, Michelle. Here we go. Angie Myers worked outside. Gene's making masks. Sent 31 yesterday. Keep going because they still need them. And all right, very good. Good, Michelle. I'm glad to hear that because boy, she was miserable. Can remember she was riding around with her knee on that little wheelie cart thing. So I gave it to my brother-in-law for his service. Joe will get one Sunday. That's cool, Audra, about the pie thing. But I'm going to have to be on Joe's side because Sunday is, I've noticed, is not today. And yeah, that there's no way that works out. So I'm sorry for the two of you. I'd hope for better. Val Cisco wanted to donate today. I donate, just don't want to take the chance of any virus to my residents. Understand that. Toby mowed the yard. I got that on my to-do list for this week. Sherry had a nice run this morning. I did also, 6 miles. Dennis and Trina. DW, my man, is here. Kroger let him out for the evening. I appreciate Kroger doing that. No pie for Joe today. Joe, if you need a friend right now, I can provide. If you need a couch to sleep on tonight, call Toby. So, all right, here we go. We're going to begin tonight. We're looking at chapter 2.8. Tonight, kind of the aftermath of where we were yesterday. We were talking about all the stuff about with. Well, let me recap. Craig, the author of the book, pastor of this church, was doing some work and doing some things. He had a friend of his named Jason, and Jason moved into the city where Craig was at, and they worked together. They were good friends. And unfortunately, Jason had a very, we'll just go with difficult past. We don't know what the deals were, what the details were. We're not told. So Jason unfortunately did something. Again, we don't know what it was. Craig had to confront him on that. And because Craig and Jason didn't understand the dynamics of their relationship, Craig thought they were equals. Jason really looked at Craig as the mentor. And by not respecting the power dynamic in that relationship led to a horrible, horrible falling out. Jason left the church and ended up taking his own life, not simply because of his interaction with Craig, but because of probably, I'm sure, a variety of circumstances. So, as you can imagine, Craig was crushed by this because his friend, the last conversation they had was not a pleasant one. And so this was all in this second phase that we're dealing with tonight about being broken by God. Craig achieved is probably the wrong word, but he got there. He was broken by this, as anybody would be. And so now they're trying to figure out what to do now. So Craig starts out the chapter tonight by stating something that is incredibly obvious. The last sentence of the first paragraph says, "Life would be different from this moment onward. I would never be the same." I'm sure that's said with a ton of, obvious. I mean, this is something that an experience like this is something that it does change life. So I ask you, my first question is rhetorical, and then I'm going to ask a follow-up question. You can jump in the chat on this one. Have you ever had an experience like that where you knew immediately this is a game changer? Life is going to be different because of this decision, good or bad. I mean, this can go both ways. I mean, you've all made good decisions that changed life, and you were pretty darn excited about it, and that's cool too. But have you ever had a situation where something happened, good or bad, that you knew life was going to be different from that point forward? And I know the answer is yes. So, in a word or two or three, how would you describe that experience? What was it about the experience, again, good or bad, that made you realize things are going to be different? All right, Cool Hand Luke hitting rock bottom. I don't know how much any of you know about Luke's story, but he's got a pretty good story to tell. So, and then he retracts the message. Sorry, Luke. So, having children, I've not been there myself, but I certainly would think that would be one. Scary and devastating when it goes. Scary and devastating could go both ways, actually. Time slowed down. Yeah, you become very aware. Yeah, Toby says he's been there. So how would you describe those changes? Heartbreaking, sickening, sad. Okay, so here we have two people who are giving us good examples. Valerie says, Val says when that happened, it was heartbreaking, it was sickening, it was very sad. Audra turns around on the other hand and says, yeah, when I went on my Emmaus walk, which many people would talk about Emmaus being a game changer, it changed for the better. I mean, when I knew things were going to get better. So these life-changing moments, obviously, clearly, Craig's example is a bad one. But they can come in various shapes and sizes, and sometimes they're good. And whether they're good or bad, Teresa, you're right. View on life turns. View on life changes. Either it gets better, it gets worse, gets more narrow, whatever. But the idea is it does change the way we look at things. And yep, Paula scares us half to death, and that's what it does. I mean, think about it. In our world that we live in, there's nothing like fear to get your attention. Of all the things on earth, nothing holds your attention like something you're afraid of. And sometimes when those life-changing moments happen, that fear is the getting of the attention. And any of you who've ever had children, sometimes you got to put the fear of God in them to get them to pay attention. Make sure they're really with you. And that sometimes happens. So, all right. Man, everybody's retracting their answers here tonight. Okay, Cool Hand Luke, he's still, previous answer still stands. I'm sure it does. Candy, pastoring my first church. Yeah, I with you on that one. Tim getting held up at gunpoint. I'm with you on that one too. That's a scary moment when those kinds of things happen. I've had a gun pulled on me a couple different times, and that's an interesting experience. Okay, scary questions, obviously, because what's this new reality look like? Paula, I certainly would agree with that. Amy was scared. Matt says, God put me where I needed to be to bring me closer to him. Sometimes it takes hindsight to see that, Matt, but I certainly would agree with you. Yep. Val also seconds the Emmaus walk. And yep, Teresa and Matt on the same page there. So you all recognize what those look like, what they feel like, what that experience is like. Okay. Okay, now he goes on to a little section here to talk about what he did in the aftermath of Jason taking his own life. And I find this I find this, I don't know, interesting is probably the wrong word, but I read this and I paid close attention to it because I got an observation I want to make, and we'll get to that as we move along here. Okay, so as everybody is just devastated by this news, as you would imagine, it says right in the middle of the next paragraph, he says, "We did all we could to comfort each other." Okay. Yes, Toby, those big moments can be a blessing in disguise, even the bad ones. Not all of them turn out that way, but many of them do. But that does take some time, but it gets there and can really help redirect and refocus life in a very significant way. And actually, that leads into my next question was going to be, he says, we did all we could to comfort each other, understanding that their efforts at this moment were sorely lacking. But he says doing everything that they could. How? Let me phrase this question and make sure I'm saying what I mean and not saying what I don't mean. How could enduring an awful time like I have no question this was? How could enduring an awful time become a bonding experience? And while y'all are thinking about your answers, I'll tell a story that and I think many of you will identify this. I want to know how can enduring a terrible time be a bonding experience? One of the things that happens when pastors leave congregations, as I've done half a dozen times or so, one of the rules they say is don't go back and do funerals, don't go back and do weddings, don't go back and do baptisms. Go be in your new congregation. And the reason with their new pastor yet, because she or he has only been there for a couple of weeks, and it always seems like there's a VIP death, 5 minutes after you move in. Every church that seems to happen, it may not be a death, but it's some kind of significant congregational experience. And whenever things are turned upside down, the first thing everybody wants to do is grab something familiar. Well, we don't know you because you've been here for 5 minutes, but we want the last guy. And the reason they tell us not to go back and jump into those situations is because those are significant bonding experiences for the new pastor. They get a chance to establish themselves when something awful happens. And if you run as the previous guy, if you run in there and get in the way, you are, again, not willfully, but you're undermining the new guy. You're not giving them a chance to become the pastor. And I have seen, I hope that I've never done that. I don't know that I have. I tried not to. But I have seen other situations where pastors have left, but not really left. And all that did was serve to undermine the current pastor who was there. And that's hard because, again, everybody, I mean, the pastor has a lot of emotion, loves these folks, has loved these folks as long as she or he has been there. And whenever there's a significant need and somebody wants you to come back, you know, your knee-jerk reaction is, well, of course I'll do that. But by doing that, you undermine the chance for the new pastor to establish themselves in the congregation. And so that recognizes how much these difficult times are very much bonding experiences for groups. And that gives a chance for people to get to know each other in a very significant way when there's these kind of challenges. So, all right, now let me jump in the chat here. Teresa says, right connections are very comforting. Yes, the right connections at the right time. But sometimes we have to allow new connections to happen too, Teresa. And I know that's exactly what you're saying. And it's important for those connections to happen, during times of trial, because, trial by fire is the best way to forge relationships, at least the most deep way. So Cheryl says, shared strife gives a strong connection. Yep. The more intense the event is, the closer the bond, clearly. And in fact, in the medical profession, Cheryl, I'm sure you're bonding with people now in a way you never had before because of COVID-19. So congratulations on that, and make the most of it. Gene, it makes you rely on those you love and deepen relationships? Absolutely, because you're in over your head. And there's nothing like being in over your head to help you realize how much you need the man or woman next to you to pick you up. So, all right, Matt, my son had very little respect for me. Then God changed my heart, and now our relationship is growing strong. That's a significant moment. And see, had you not walked that road together, you and your son could still be estranged now. And so good for you, Matt, for working through that. That's a way to be a dad, my man. Toby, you find out who you are and who you can count on. There's a song, you find out who your friends are, I think. It was a couple of years back. Speaks to that very thing, Toby, and you are absolutely correct. You find out who your friends are when things are going on, and true friendships are revealed when times get tough. So Joyce got some props for Matt. Good for you. Cheryl, yeah, I was wondering if the nice weather would hurt our crab. We got 37 logged in right now, so congratulations and thanks for coming out. Tell Jack I said hello. Val Cisco, my lowest point in life, choice I made when hiding from God. 18 years. Wow, that's Val. It's a long time. Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure what got you over that 18 years later were the connections that you shared with significant people, Val. So that's very important. So Parker, in dark moments, you can see who you can trust and rely on, and God is always there. Yes, Parker. And sometimes it takes, we were talking about, I think the first week, we were talking about some of the stories in the Bible, how Jonah prayed from the belly of the whale and Jesus prayed from the Garden of Gethsemane. Sometimes we got to get to those places to realize how important those connections are. Hey, Sherry, all the people who are hurting for the same reason and can therefore emphasize support each other. Yeah. It's interesting how we have much more compassion and much more understanding. And that's not to say we don't have compassion and understanding for other people. But when people go into significant, difficult times that we also can identify with in whatever way, that can also be a bonding experience. And that's really hard, when you're trying to explain yourself to somebody, when all of a sudden somebody goes, nope, no explanation needed. I get it. And sometimes not being able to identify is very hard. And when you're trying to pour your heart out to somebody and they're having a hard time hearing that, that's hard. And then there's other times when you say something and geez, can Tim talk? All of a sudden, um, somebody identifies with that, and that can be a significant bonding experience. Just like Gene Smith says, trauma makes us compassionate toward others who go through similar events. Gene, you got there a lot faster than I did, but that's exactly right. That gives us a mutual experience, common frame of reference, and all that stuff is important for building relationships. And free will sometimes sucks. Yes, it does, Matt. Especially when people won't do what I wanted to do. And it's funny. There's been a lot of discussion about the idea of free will in our current circumstances. About this whole shutting the world down kind of thing. Where does the First Amendment lie and that kind of stuff? And there's a lot of conversation around that. I mean, that's not to say that I don't agree with what's happened, because I think there'd be a whole bunch more people dead had we not done what we did. But at some point, we have to figure out what the exit strategy is to this, and I've not heard that yet. So how do you start a quarantine? Well, we all know how that works. How do you end one? Nobody knows how that works yet. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. So. All right, Cheryl. So true, Gene and Sherry. You guys got it. Got some props there. That's cool. And Parker's got some good words for Matt. And I think we're all on the same page on that one. So, yes, there's nothing like. I mean, honestly, think about this. There are 33 people logged in here right now. The only person here tonight who knows all of these people is me. I'm relatively confident there are people who are interacting in this chat room right here who wouldn't be able to pick each other out of a lineup. I think that's cool because it is a common experience of quarantine during COVID-19 that has brought us together. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. Someday when this thing is lifted, we're going to have a face-to-face meeting, because I think you all need to look at each other's face, because I'm pretty sure you don't know each other. But because of this common experience, and because your lunatic pastor just won't ever let anything go, here we are having this conversation. I think that is extremely cool, that you guys would give up your evenings to be here to get to know each other when we're only just faces on a screen. And I think that's very awesome that you guys would be here for this, because you've had this significant experience together. Now we need to put faces and names together. And how completely cool is that? So, Val, dark times come out of the dark, step into the light. Yeah. Yeah, and Val, those significant dark times make us really appreciate the light, just like these particular times of isolation make us appreciate community in ways that we never would have been able to do before. And yep, and I'm sure, Val, you met a number of people who were, going through similar things. And Cool Hand Luke, I look like Brad Pitt, Andre the Giant, and Chewbacca in a 10 package, a 5'10" package. I don't know how accurate that description is, Luke. Remember, I know you, and I don't know if you're as hairy as Chewbacca, but the rest of it sounds about right. So there you go. All right. All right. Let's continue on here. One of the things that he says, if you go into the next paragraph, he says, after the tragedy, I'm in the paragraph for those of you following along. Yes, Joyce, I would say well over 75% of the people who are in this right now are not in the directory, which is very cool. So, and Matt agrees that Chewbacca is better looking than Cool Hand Luke. Matt, I may have to second that one. All right, cool. So one of the things he said is, after the tragedy, Jason's family never went back to the house where they found him. Now, first of all, the detail we learned there is that his family found him. God have mercy on them for that. But the next sentence he says, and this is the part I got a couple questions about. He says, his wife and 2 kids moved in with us during their transition. Again, that is a wonderful gesture that should have been done. Craig should have been the one to extend that. And I am sure that Craig and his wife, whose name I don't know, were a significant comfort to this family who is going through. I mean, I don't know if you can ever say the worst thing a family could go to, but this has got to make the list. I mean, this is awful. So they're going through this time. and they moved in with Craig and his wife during this time. Now, my first question is, jump in the chat room and tell me what are the pros and cons of the wife and children of Jason moving in with Craig and his wife to make this transition. Tell me some pros and cons, because there are pros and cons. List some of them out for me. And Paula is in favor of a face-to-face introduction. We'll work something out when the time comes. So, what are the pros and cons? Okay. Clearly, Gene, having them live with them would be able to help Jason's family, and I'm sure that brought special comfort to Craig, and I think that's fantastic. Cheryl says, did that help Craig forgive himself? He doesn't mention that in this chapter. However, we may get to that. Eric points out fresh start. Yeah, I mean, not going back to the house is a fresh start, and then moving in with Craig. I think the fact that they were willing to move into Craig, I think we can clearly read into that his wife, Jason's wife, did not hold hard feelings toward Craig, which that's a very positive thing. It's hard to grieve and be strong for them at the same time. We've all been in that position where we got to keep a stiff upper lip when we just want to bawl. I get that. Amy talks about fresh start. Pro, it was company. Con, the blame and the guilt. Yeah. Going back, and this is the part that I found extremely, again, interesting. I'm going to say interesting, but I don't mean interesting because this situation is terrible. But okay, hold on here. They could grieve together. That would be a positive, I would say. Support for the family would be a positive. Con, a lot of the raw, depressed feelings to deal with the wife and the kids. Everybody's got their own junk going on in this. That's true. Having everyone in their own space, again, Eric, and I'm sure with your growing crew, you understand that. Being in everybody's face may or may not be good. Val, forgiveness. Forgiveness always being a positive, and I don't know that there was a lot of blaming amongst this group of Craig and Jason's wife. I didn't seem to be. The fact that she was willing to even move in there tells me not a lot of blaming was going on, which is good. But the thing that I found interesting is go back to the very long conversation we had last night. What was the problem between, and I spent a long time developing this point because I wanted to make this point tonight. Along the way, the problem became between Jason and Craig is that there was no time invested in looking at the power dynamics of this relationship. Remember, Craig thought he and Jason were meeting as equals, where we think, based on the details we read, it looks to me like Jason was coming into this with Craig as the mentor. So it was more like this. And because Craig went to confront Jason about, again, whatever happened that we don't know, when Craig went to confront him, he went to confront an equal. And Jason responded like a person who was not an equal, who was looking at Craig as a mentor. And so Craig approached the relationship one direction, Jason approached it in another, and we get this big clash because Craig was expecting Jason to respond like an equal, and he responded like somebody, I don't want to say beneath. Whatever word means beneath, it doesn't imply that Jason was under him, because that's not what I'm trying to say. But the power dynamic was not equal. Jason was assigning Craig all the power. Craig was assigning equal power, and that led to the confrontation becoming far more intense than either one of them had meant for it to be. So in this happening, that was where the misunderstanding between Craig and Jason happened. Now, do you see Craig coming to Jason's wife and inviting them in and inviting them to come and be safe here in our house? Do you see how Craig now is looking at the power dynamic far differently? I don't see, again, I'm not saying Craig did anything wrong in inviting his wife to come and live there. I think that was a beautiful gesture and should have been done. Okay, so I'm full support of it. But do you see how this is how this is Craig taking responsibility for the power dynamic? Because by saying, come into our huge palatial estate here and live with us, Craig is now establishing himself in the power position. He's now in the position Jason always thought he was. Now, I'm pointing this out to say this is growth, because now Craig is behaving in the way Jason thought he should have been all along. Am I making sense here? Craig is taking the responsibility in the relationship. He's being, even though they were probably of similar age, I'm guessing, Craig almost assumes a parental role here. Come into my home. I'm going to open my home. You will be absolutely safe here. We're going to take care of all the problems. We're going to take care of all the meals. We're going to take care of all the utilities. We're going to take care of whatever else needs to be done. We're going to take care of all this to make sure everything is here. Craig is stepping into the role Jason always thought he was in. I'm giving this to you tonight as an example of growth. Craig did not take the power dynamic for granted again. And he clearly is not doing it here. He's putting himself in the power position. Now, a lot of times we say something like that. Oh, he's taking all the authority. We say that as a bad thing. No, I'm saying in this situation, it was an extremely good thing to do. And something that Craig wishes he would have done sooner. And we're going to see that in some of the things that he writes later. But yes, this is Craig moving forward, Cheryl, exactly. But he's moving forward with an understanding of the power that he holds. And the power of the situation. And I'm not saying anything disparaging about anybody. I'm not disparaging Jason. I'm not disparaging his wife. I'm not disparaging his situation. I don't mean that at all. What I'm saying is Jason was looking for Craig to be, a parental figure to him. And when that didn't pan out because Craig didn't understand that, as soon as he realized he'd blown it, I don't mean that as crass as it sounds, but once he realized he had messed it up, he immediately steps into that role. I'm calling that growth. And I'm going to tell you that it is my humble opinion, Craig never made that mistake. He never will enter another relationship without considering the power dynamic. Now, again, that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but when you're in a position like Craig was in, where he's responsible for this congregation and responsible for this movement that they're trying to create, that is a huge deal, because he's, again, working in a church, and many of you have served in leadership capacities in the church. That can be a difficult thing. Craig is building a church from the ground up, something I'm assuming none of you have ever done that before or been a part of anything like that. That is a huge power dynamic. And they're attracting a lot of broken people who are coming in looking for all kinds of things. So Craig never again took that for granted. I'm offering this to you, saying once Craig was broken, he almost immediately learned the lesson. Because I'm assuming that that Jason's wife and children moved in later that same day. I mean, I'm guessing that happened that fast. He didn't say that, but I think there's reason to believe that that's how fast it happened. So I'm giving that to you as a sign of growth. Craig now understood what it means to respect the power dynamic. Are y'all following me here? You see what I'm showing you? Craig's growing quickly, as often we do during times of severe brokenness. And Craig is quickly stepping into the role now. And I sure to this very day never took power dynamic for granted ever again. He was probably very careful who he connected with and how he connected with them, because these can be very, very dangerous times, as Craig now knows, because God broke him in this situation. Okay? This is any of you who've ever been through a time of great brokenness, a time of great, great upheaval. The lessons come fast and furious, and they come down the pike pretty darn quickly, and you learn them pretty fast, because you're learning the hard way. And Craig learned this the hard way. And we see that by how fast he was able to turn on the power dynamic in this relationship. That's all I'm pointing out. So I hope you all are still here. All right, I made that point good enough for you. We're ready to move on. You guys still here? The chat room dried up on me. You guys still here? This is weird for me because I can't tell. It says 33 people are here, but I hope y'all are still around. So, all right, good. Got a few of you here. All right. I would go on to say that. All right, guys. All right, thank you. He went on to say that he also officiated at the funeral. He says that in the next paragraph. He went on to officiate the funeral. I again offer this to you as proof of the power dynamic. uh, Craig never took that for granted again. And he's stepping into a very, very much leadership role. He's got a whole congregation now that is just devastated by this. And they needed somebody to step up. Craig knew it was going to be him, or needed to be him. Not it was necessarily going to be, but it needed to be him. And he stepped forward to stand into the pulpit in a moment that I'm sure he didn't really want to, but he did because he had to, for his people and for his church. And all right, so we still got a few more things to get to. It's interesting how hurt Craig's feelings were by his initial confrontation with Jason. And again, we've all had that happen, get our feathers ruffled by different things. And as he was reflecting on that in the next paragraph, the paragraph that starts with, though no one knew it, the last words that Jason and I had spoken to each other were words we'd both forever regret. He, meaning Jason, he had done wrong, sinned, he'd lied, he betrayed God, and he betrayed me. But, Craig writes, I didn't care anymore about that betrayal. His feelings were so hurt, he went 2 weeks without talking to his friend. And now, because of being broken by the situation, whatever. It's a dumb thing between guys. And that's what it became. So it was a huge issue until it was broken, and then it didn't even matter. It was just totally over. And I have absolute confidence that not a single word of this betrayal or whatever it was that happened came up at this man's funeral. I would never have brought it up, and I'm sure Craig didn't either. Because now, whatever that was irrelevant. And so he says he didn't care anymore about that betrayal. It is amazing how much perspective pain can give. Pain can give amazing perspective, whether it be emotional, physical, psychological, relational pain, can give amazing, amazing perspective on what's going on. And I know some of you in this chat room tonight know exactly what Craig is talking about here when he says this, because you have been through some times that were just crushing. And by going through that time, coming out the other side, gives you an amazing perspective. Yeah, Gene, and that's part of how brokenness works. You take the lesson of the breaking with you, but you leave the experience behind, and that's not always easy to do. And it is very admirable when people can pull that off. When I can learn the lesson and carry the lesson with me, but leave the experience in the past. That's a tricky maneuver to pull off, and that's the best thing we can do. Keep the lesson, drop the regret, but that's sometimes hard to do too. It's very admirable when people can pull that one off. So, okay, so I'm in the paragraph where he talks about he didn't care about the betrayal anymore, which I'm absolutely certain he didn't. If you go on to the next paragraph, he says, Daryl gives that an amen. Yeah. Teresa, forgiveness is the best gift we can give ourselves. Yes, because forgiveness is all about me, not about you. I heard that somewhere before. And Paula giving props to Gene, so that's cool. All right, so no matter, going on to the very next paragraph, Craig writes, no matter what he had done, I knew I should have acted sooner to mend our friendship. Again, he's not saying it in so many words, but is this sentence, and I'm going to read it to you again. No matter what Jason had done, I knew I should have acted sooner to mend our friendship. Why? Because Craig says, how did I not know? How did I not know I was in the power position in this relationship? How did I not know Jason was looking at me at this way? How did I mistake a relationship like this that was actually a relationship like this? How did I do that? I got to be the dumbest person around. That's when regret starts to set in. Okay? And talking like this is difficult, because what he's identifying here is something. Should he have known it? Yes, he probably should have known it. But this is not necessarily something that he should carry around. What is the lesson? The lesson is be careful with the power dynamic, but you got to leave the experience in the past. That's right, Cheryl, because guilt can get to be real, real heavy. And that's why you see Matt and Val giving props to CR. That's what CR does. It allows us to air out some of the stuff. For any of you who've been a part of Celebrate Recovery, it's about our hurts, habits, and hangups that we're still carrying. And sometimes we need to process those things so we can set the experience down, but carry the we set the experience itself down, but carry the lesson on with us. You don't ever want to forget the lesson. You forget the lesson, then you got to do it again, and nobody wants to do that. But so you hang on to the lesson, but you set the experience down. The pain, the regret, the guilt, that stuff's got to go. Craig says, I should have known. I should have known. And I totally understand where he's coming from. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I totally get where he's coming from. That is a legit cry from the heart. But this is a recognition that Craig did not respect the power dynamic like he should have. Statements like this is what we say when we've experienced being broken. I'm broken because somehow I screwed up. And I'm sure that Craig, especially in those early days and weeks following this, had a heck of a time trying to come to terms with what happened, because he continually says, how did I miss this? Because looking back on it, I mean, and a couple of you said this last night, what is hindsight? Hindsight's 2020, man. Exactly, Candy. Hindsight is 2020. And looking back on that, it's one of these amazing things. But you can't. You got to go with what you know. Believe me, you want to see when hindsight's going to be 2020? Wait till a month from now when they're talking about COVID-19 and we know a lot more than we know today. Everybody's going to be like, well, if I'd have been in charge, I'd have done it all right and got everything perfect. No, you wouldn't have. Because based on what we had to work with, this is where we are. We can like it. We can argue about it, whatever. But based on what we knew and when we knew it, this is what had to happen. And I'm going to get real annoyed when this all comes out and everybody wants to blame everybody else for what happened, because they should have, had looked in their crystal ball and known all this. Yeah, that's just garbage. So, yeah, Val, I'm sure CR brought you out of a lot of denial. That's what those groups are for, and they're real good at it. So, all right, let's turn the page. All right. If you turn the page, I'm actually in the same paragraph, I think. He gives a list of questions. Let me read these questions to you. That these are straight from Craig. He says, "Why didn't he, meaning Jason, why didn't he tell me he was in trouble? Why didn't he open up? In hindsight, there were so many signs of distress. Why didn't I see it? Why did our last conversation have to be so terrible? Why didn't I reach out to him earlier?" These, my friends, are what if questions. Those are the things we got to set down. We ask what if, we learn the lesson, then we set the what ifs down. We don't allow them to follow us. Now, the devil likes to whisper them to us. Man, Craig, you must be really stupid not to have seen this, and now your friend is dead. What a horrible things to say. And not necessarily true. But, there's enough shadow of doubt here that will allow for this. And that regret can get to be crushing if we allow it. And so that's what it means to set the experience down, but carry the lesson with you. And whenever you're going through a time of being significantly broken, that's right, Kawhi and Luke, that stinking thinking can really, really get to be a just a crushing load to bear. Yes. Well, Val, Wayne Street is happy to have you as well. So, all right. Now, okay, so Jason's widow and children have moved in. The funeral is now over, and they're kind of making a feeble attempt at going back to real life. He goes into a section where he talks about, I think it's the following Sunday. And I'm on the paragraph here that starts with the following Sunday. He talks about experience he had in church, and I would like to want to talk with you about this. So the paragraph is starting with the following Sunday. Right about in the middle, there's a sentence that says, so in front of a small crowd of people, I'm assuming that's his congregation, I broke down sobbing. He had a sermon planned, was ready to go. He tried to get into it, and it just wasn't happening. So he broke down crying in front of his congregation. And he says, in one of the most publicly transparent moments of my life, I talked to the pain and brokenness of what we experienced since starting the church. Okay. Before Jason's death, I was hurting, exhausted, overwhelmed, and scared. After his death, I was simply wrecked, shattered, broken, and scarred. Okay. So that's what he's talking about here. Here's my question. This may not be something that he could have avoided. I mean, he had a lot of emotion, a lot of, about this. So breaking down in front of his congregation may have been unavoidable, but was it wise? Was this a wise thing to do? To allow himself to become this overwhelmed in front of his congregation? Very curious as to how you feel about this. Everybody jump in the comments. Tell me, was that a wise thing to do? Or whatever your feelings are about it. What do you think about him having a breakdown like this in front of his congregation? All right, cool hand, Luke. I would agree with that. If you don't let it come out appropriately, it will come out inappropriately. That's true. It was a very human reaction. Yep, under a very high pressure situation, Joyce. I would agree with that. Okay, it would have been probably embarrassing, and I'm sure he was trying to choke it down, Amy. Okay, yes, it shows real emotion. It's good for a congregation to see. Possibly, Audra. Can never please everyone. Some folks will like it, others won't. That's extremely true. That's right, Gene. Once he started rolling down that hill, there's no stopping it. Very human, Angie. That's true. Joe, it was the truth and sharing the burden. Yep. Teresa, it depends on each person as to how they react to their leader. That's true because I'm sure there was a wide variety of opinion on that. Susan says it showed his human side. It certainly did. A genuine, honest human moment. Paula, yep, I would agree with that too. Um, I he goes on to talk about how this moment, people came down and began to pray and kind of had this very moving moment. Yeah, I don't think he chose to do it, Cheryl. I agree with that. So maybe asking if it was wise was the wrong way to phrase the question. But I'm curious as to how the congregation would deal with this. I am not a terribly emotional person, but I know that there are some ministers out there that's kind of their style, and I have had many parishioners have come to me about ministers who have these breakdown moments and in front of their congregation about things. Sometimes that's accepted, but other times it's like he just had one of these last week, and the week before I think it was something else. That's a dangerous thing because people, especially people who didn't know him well, I think would have struggled with this. So, so I agree, Cheryl. I don't know if he made a choice to do that, but he was asking his congregation to minister to him in this moment. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it was definitely a vulnerable moment, and some people don't deal with that well. So, yeah, Eric, yeah, he had to let it out and get it out, and the fact that he was living with Jason's wife at that moment, that he was living with her in his house. I mean, that was difficult for him to have a place to be that way. Who does a pastor go to for comfort? We have our ways, and we have our connections and people that we know. But a lot of times, a lot of the stuff is done in private because there's no public there's no public outpouring for these kind of things. Sometimes being human just doesn't work. That's true. That's because we're all broken. And Joe, maybe maybe his breaking at that moment was for someone else to see. And now that I agree with. There could have been a God inspired. God probably had a whole bunch of people he was trying to get to, and in that moment, I'm sure there were people in the congregation who needed to see that at that time. So, yes, Cheryl, It depends on how they move on. They probably as a congregation needed that moment. That I absolutely agree with, and I think it's true. But they're going to have to, has to continue on. So Val says God. God's usually a good answer for things. That's good. Kuhan, Luke, an appropriate time for both. Yes. Yes, Linda, his congregation showed him their compassion, and it was good for all of them to realize he is human. He needs them as well. True. I couldn't agree more with that. And as difficult as a situation as that was, it was a nice moment for them to come together, and I'm sure that that's what it ended up being. But I am not at all accusing Craig of doing this, but that can become a very slippery slope that can go into codependency. And if any of you are familiar with what codependency means, uh, that is the single most destructive form of relationship on the face of the planet. It basically means I can't live without you and you can't live without me. There's no such thing as a successful codependent relationship. Now we can depend upon each other, but not for our very survival. And once, everything in my life depends on another person, even if that person accepts and reciprocates, that is bad every single time. And these kind of situations between leaders and people they're leading, I have seen these become very codependent, and they become poisonous at best. And again, I'm not at all. Clearly, Craig did not take it that far. Okay, and that's what I'm that's the point I'm making here. Is he clearly had learned about power dynamics in the relationship. He very easily could have come down to the level of his congregation, tried to meet all of them where they were, and allow them to meet him where he was, and become codependent. There's no way he was going to do that because that's a mistake he made with Jason. And so he avoided that clearly. He would not still be the pastor of a church had he gone down that road. So what I'm saying is sometimes I catch flack personally for not being more emotional about things. I'm not an overly emotional person. It's just my style, and that doesn't mean I don't sometimes get worked up about stuff, because I certainly do. But this is not my style. And so for the people who are disappointed that I don't, break down and cry in front of the church and things, that's not where I'm at. There may come a time when that's going to be necessary, but that's a place that I don't often get to. And again, I'm not saying Craig does either. This was clearly a black swan event here, where it was really a terrible thing that happened, and certainly not something that's going to be a regular occurrence by any stretch of the imagination. And so he had to express himself in this way, but he still respected the power dynamic, because he learned a very horrible lesson about where that can go if not respected. And oh yeah, I mean, Gene, I don't equate caring with emotion. Does that make sense? I mean, yes, I do care about people, but I'm not an emotional person about that. So yes, I'm not saying that I don't feel emotions. I'm just not emotional. There's the semantics argument now is running away from me, but I think you see what I'm saying. Just that's just how God wired me for whatever reason. But so there you go. Yeah. Well, Teresa, and the reason I know the power dynamic, I've never had Craig's exact experience, but I've had nuclear warheads go off in my life because I didn't respect power dynamics before. And in multiple different contexts and multiple different settings and multiple different churches. And yes, I'm very, very cognizant of that. Oh, well, I was not aware of that, Cheryl. I did not know that. That's a difficult thing when things go wrong in parsonages or in the pastor's personal life. That becomes very troubling, because there's a lot of people sometimes that starts circling the sharks in the water too. So I'm glad that Dave was supported during that time. I have not a single question that he needed it, and it's very good. And I'm sure that's something that something he needed, and good for you, for those of you who were able to do it. So that's great. So, all right. Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, okay. So you guys have seen that here, Cheryl, and I see that. So, and look, pastors are people too. I'm not any better than anybody else, and neither is Dave, and neither is any other pastor. We have stuff go wrong in our families too, and and sometimes that's hard because that's when the power dynamic becomes very, very uh, uh, different, I guess. So, all right. Glad you're rocking out a wash rag. It's a very good analogy, Cool Hand Luke. I think you understand me very well. Okay. All right. So let's. I got a whole bunch of notes here, but it's 9 o'clock. How do you guys keep doing this to me? Get me off on these things. And yes, and thank you for your prayers, Teresa. Let's skip down a few paragraphs to where he says, on that day, something changed in our young church. You guys can chime in here as to what you think changed, but I'm going to tell you what I think changed. They had a day was they embarked on a journey together. They embarked on a journey of toward recovery. They're going to walk the road to recover, walk the road of recovery together. And that I tell you, that is that's a hard road to travel, and it's better when you can travel with somebody or with people. And as a congregation, I'm sure that they had to walk a very awful road together through this. And I think that what Craig was able to do with this outpouring of emotion is he was able to invite people to walk with him. He was not, and sometimes we as leaders, and any of you who are in leadership positions and wherever you're serving, I mean, this is not a unique to pastor thing, is we like to, and that ain't always how it works. In fact, it's almost never how it works. Normally, as a leader, we're all standing together, and the leader says, see the promised land over there? That's where we're going. And then everybody starts to walk with the leader to go that direction. That's generally how it works, especially in tragic situations like this. Leaders don't do well when they're standing at the finish line trying to coax people toward them. We walk the road together. And Gene, you're absolutely right. I mean, you want to talk about a timely book. We're all going to have a road to recovery that we're going to have to walk once COVID-19 is in the past. And we're going to have to walk that road together. And nobody's going to be able to go stand on the finish line and try to coax people that direction. It's going to take people leading people in that direction. And that's what needs to happen. Craig was able to stand beside his congregation and lead them, yes, but lead them as one of them, not try to coax them toward the destination. Yeah, Val, connecting by walking beside them and growing together, because they all had a lot to learn, as Craig has clearly articulated in this session. So, all right, I got a few more notes, but I think we've covered the big points here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the next chapter is the last chapter in this session. I'm skipping ahead here so I can see. Yeah, yes. So after tomorrow, which is 2.9, we will turn to phase 3, which is send me. So I've read part of this chapter already. He's got a funny story about his workout partner, whose name is John, but he calls him Paco, and you can read about why he calls him that. But and some struggles that his friend workout buddy kind of went through, and some things we're going to talk about. So that's where we're going to be tomorrow. We'll finish up the break me section, and then we'll answer the fundamental question. Okay, the first session we asked God to search us to find out if there's any offensive way in me, and to take those offensive ways and break them. Craig's specific example was he wasn't given proper respect to power dynamics and relationships, and God broke that. And so now, and that's just one example of many. I mean, that's just a single example of a bunch of examples we have in our life. So of all those things that are out there, we have to do something with them. And when we get to phase 3, which will be after this final section tomorrow, we'll talk about what we're going to do with them. And that is when we ask God to send us. With this new preparation, God, where are you going to send us? What's the new horizon we're going to walk toward? So that's kind of where we are. So, hey, as always, I sure do appreciate you guys coming out. If you got, thanks, Val. If you guys have anything left for the good of the order, jump in and tell us now. We're going to be here. I do have a question for you before you all take off. Obviously, this is Holy Week. I know it doesn't feel like Holy Week because none of us been to church for a month. But would you like to, on maybe later this week for our evening sessions, would you like to do something special for Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday? Since these meetings will be taking place, if anybody wants to jump in, if you'd like to be thinking about that, and I'll put that question to you tomorrow night. Maybe we could have a special time or gather communion elements and to have communion again or whatever. But if you'd like to do something special for Monday, Thursday, and or Good Friday as a part of these evening things, any suggestions, I'd be glad to hear them. So I'll put that to you tomorrow night. We'll make that a part of our conversation. So thanks, Tim. Same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow night. So one man drama. I haven't done a one man drama since I've been here. I used to do those at Forest Park sometimes where I'd reenact an entire Bible story by myself. I think the best one I did was Jonah when I got swallowed by the whale and ended up under the stage. That was fun. But yeah. So all right, we'll give some thought to that. Yeah, I'll practice some songs and not lead singing. That may be your gift. So all right, everybody, I'll give some thought to that. You guys think about too. I'll put that question to you tomorrow night and see what we want to do. I sure do appreciate you guys coming out. Thanks, Daryl, for the reminder. I appreciate you guys coming out, being a part of these conversations. I look forward to this all day. It helps pass a little time and help me unwind here a little bit in the evening so I can go to bed. So appreciate you guys all coming out. We'll see you here tomorrow night. I'll send out the link. And one final instruction. You may not have seen this coming, but I think this is a very important piece of advice I could give all of you. And this advice is go wash your hands. Have a good evening, everybody.